Preston Rivers slammed his palm against the steering wheel as the engine of his black Aston Martin coughed, sputtered, and died with a pathetic wheeze. "Of all days," he muttered, yanking open the door and stepping out into the heat shimmering off the deserted stretch of Nevada highway. The desert was empty in all directions. No cell signal. No passing cars. No assistant to scream at. Just him, his dead car, and the endless sun. Preston Rivers, CEO of Rivers Innovations, billionaire tech mogul, and a man who hadn't pumped his own gas since college was officially stranded. He rolled up his sleeves, glaring at the hood like it had personally betrayed him. He was supposed to be in LA by 6 for a board dinner. Instead, he was sweating in Italian loafers 30 miles from the nearest town. And then gravel crunched behind him. A dusty red pickup pulled to the shoulder a few feet away. The window rolled down, and a woman with wild chestnut curls and sunglasses too big for her face leaned out. "You okay? Or are you just arguing with the engine for fun?" He blinked. She smirked no, smiled, but it had that teasing edge. "Because if it's the second one, I won't interrupt." "I broke down," Preston said flatly. "Yeah, I got that part." She threw the truck into park and hopped out, her boots crunching on the gravel. "Pop the hood." "I don't need pop the hood." He narrowed his eyes. "Do you even know what you're doing?" She crossed her arms. "Do you want help or not?" Without a word, he hit the hood release. She stepped forward, balancing on the balls of her feet as she peered in like she'd done this 100 times. "Battery cable's loose," she said after a second. "You got pliers?" "I have a corporate jet." She looked at him like he'd just told her he owned the moon. "Cool. That jet parked out here somewhere." Preston stared at her. She was something else. No fear. No hesitation. Just pure, grounded confidence. He should have been annoyed, but instead, something about her made him want to keep talking. "I'll grab my kit." She turned, heading back to the truck. He watched the sway of her hips, the way she moved like she didn't care who he was or how expensive his watch was. It wasn't something he was used to. She came back with a small toolbox and handed him the pliers. "Fix it or let me?" He handed them right back. "Be my guest." She leaned in again, fingers sure, movements quick. "Name's Jessa Hartley, by the way." "Preston Rivers." She snorted softly. "Of course it is. What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just, you look like a Preston." She tightened the cable with a sharp twist. "There. Try it now." He got in, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. He stepped out, letting the door swing shut. "You're not a mechanic, are you?" "Nope. But I rebuilt a '69 Mustang with my dad when I was 15. He didn't know what to say to that. She was so real. No polish, no fake smiles. Just honest, confident, and unapologetically herself. "I owe you," he said. She shrugged. "You don't. But I wouldn't say no to a cold drink." He hesitated. "I was on my way to a dinner meeting in LA. She pulled her sunglasses down just enough to look him in the eye. And, he didn't know why he paused. But he did. "And I think that meeting can wait." She grinned. "There's a diner 15 minutes that way." She pointed. "Best pie in the state. You in?" He wasn't sure what possessed him to say it. But yeah, I'm in. They rode in her truck. No AC, windows down, wind in his face. She turned up the radio, some old country song he didn't know, and sang along without caring if she was off-key. "Do you always rescue strangers on the side of the road?" he asked over the wind. "Only the ones who look like they've never changed a tire in their life." He laughed. "You're not wrong." The diner was a small, dusty spot with faded vinyl booths and a waitress named Dot who greeted Jessa with a hug and a "You're late again, sweetheart." They sat across from each other in a booth and he watched her sip her iced tea like this was the most normal thing in the world. "So," Jessa said, "what does a guy like you do when he's not getting stranded in the desert?" He hesitated. Normally he'd lead with the company. The accolades. The billions. But something about her made him say, I build things. Tech stuff. Apps. Software. She raised a brow. Apps? Like dating apps. He nearly choked on his water. No. God, no. Good. Those things are a mess. She dug into her slice of pie like it was her last meal. So Mr. Tech Stuff, ever think about slowing down and enjoying life? I enjoy life. Really? When was the last time you laughed like you did in that truck? He didn't answer. She smiled softer this time. Didn't think so. He watched her, really watched her. Her curls were frizzy from the wind and there was grease smudged on her wrist from the engine. But she was the most beautiful thing he'd seen in a long time. I haven't laughed like that in years, he admitted. Jessa didn't gloat, didn't tease. She just nodded. Well, maybe you should do it more. They lingered. Over pie, over coffee, over stories that came easier than he expected. She told him about working part-time at the local auto shop, about her mom who taught high school English, about the dream she had of opening her own garage one day. He told her about nothing, or at least not the usual things. Not the boardrooms or stocks or IPOs. Just quiet things, like how he missed his mom's lasagna, or how he hated flying. When the sun dipped low, he realized he didn't want the night to end. I should get back, he said reluctantly. She nodded, but her eyes dimmed just a little. Yeah, long drive to LA. He stood, hesitated, then pulled out his wallet. She stopped him with a hand on his arm. Don't. But I invited you. I fix cars, not egos. He swallowed hard. You're something else, Jessa Hartley. She smiled. So I've been told. They walked out to her truck. He reached for the driver's side door, then stopped. Would you ever come to LA? He asked. She looked at him for a long moment. I don't belong in your world, Preston. You don't even know what my world is. She tapped his car. Pretty sure I got a glimpse. He stepped closer. Maybe I don't want that world if you're not in it. Her breath hitched just slightly. She reached into her back pocket and pulled out a folded napkin. Scribbled on it in looping handwriting was a phone number. I don't chase suits, she said with a teasing smile. But if you ever want to laugh again, give me a call. Then she was gone. Preston stood on the side of the road, holding the napkin like it was the most important document he'd ever touched. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about boardrooms or quarterly earnings. He was thinking about a woman in dusty boots who'd fixed his car and maybe, just maybe, cracked open his heart. Preston leaned against the glass wall of his downtown LA penthouse, the city's skyline glittering beneath him. But the lights, the endless horizon of luxury, none of it settled the restlessness tugging at his chest. He'd been back for 3 days and her voice still echoed in his head. I fix cars, not egos. He hadn't called. Not yet. He didn't want to be another guy who saw something real and tried to drag it into his curated world. But the problem was he hadn't stopped thinking about her since the truck pulled away. His assistant's knock on the door broke the silence. Mr. Rivers, your board meeting starts in 15 minutes. He didn't move. Reschedule it. Her pause was audible. Sir, that meeting, I said reschedule. Once the door clicked shut, he stepped away from the window and crossed the room to the marble counter. The napkin was still there, folded with careful corners. He'd unfolded it twice, never dialed. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know what he'd say. He'd spent a decade mastering rooms full of men who measured worth in power and profit. But a woman with dusty boots and a crooked smile had made him feel completely unarmed, and he hadn't felt that alive in years. Later that night, he walked through the garage beneath the building, past rows of sleek, silent cars. His driver started to rise from the front seat, but Preston waved him off. I'll take it myself. He slid behind the wheel of a black Range Rover and pulled onto the street without a destination. The roads blurred past neon signs, crowded sidewalks, honking horns. But nothing cut through the static. Nothing felt like her. By the time he pulled into the outskirts of Palm Creek, the sun was beginning its descent behind the hills. The town was barely a blip on the map, with a single stoplight and a gas station doubling as a convenience store. But he remembered the way Jess's voice had softened when she talked about it. He spotted the auto shop before he saw her, a small, squat building with chipping blue paint and a sign that read Hartley Automotive. A beat-up Mustang sat half disassembled in the corner of the lot, its hood missing and its engine exposed like a patient mid-surgery. She was under a lifted Jeep, legs sticking out, grease on her jeans. He stepped out of the car and stood there for a moment, watching her work. No audience, no pretense, just her doing what she loved. "Unless you're here to complain about a rattle, I don't do house calls," she said without looking. "I was hoping you'd say that," he said. She slid out from under the Jeep, wiping her hands on a rag. "You came all the way back for a tune-up?" "No," she raised an eyebrow. "Then what?" "I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation." She tossed the rag onto a nearby stool. "Which part? The part where I told you needed to laugh more? Or the part where I didn't let you pay for pie? The part where you made me realize I've been existing, not living." She studied him, her eyes narrowing just slightly. "That a rehearsed line? Or are you actually serious?" "I'm not here to impress you, Jessa." "Good," she said, crossing her arms. "Because I'm not the type that gets impressed by speeches." Preston exhaled, stepping closer but keeping a respectful distance. "Then what does impress you?" She nodded toward the Jeep. "You got hands clean enough to help bleed break lines?" He blinked. "I can try." She tossed him a pair of gloves. "Then you might have a shot." He followed her inside, where the air smelled like oil and old metal. She handed him a tool, guiding him through the process. He fumbled, nearly dropped a wrench, and cursed under his breath. "You're tense," she said. "I run a multinational company. That's not an excuse to grip a ratchet like it owes you money." He looked at her, really looked at the way she moved with easy precision, at the way she didn't slow down to flatter or accommodate him. She challenged him, and he found himself wanting to earn her approval more than he ever had with investors. As the sun dipped below the shop's roofline, she leaned back and wiped her brow. "Not bad. You didn't ruin my tools." He gave a dry laugh. "High praise." She looked at him for a long beat. "What are you really doing here, Preston?" "I'm not sure," he admitted. "I just know that when you left, something didn't feel right. And when I got back to LA, everything felt worse." She leaned against the workbench, arms folded. "You think one slice of pie and a roadside breakdown changes everything?" "No, but it changed something." She didn't answer right away. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of a nearby fan and the clink of cooling metal. "Want to grab dinner?" he asked. "You don't strike me as the type who eats at diners twice." "I'm not. But I want to." She tilted her head. "You know I'm not going to suddenly put on a cocktail dress and follow you to your penthouse. I wouldn't ask you to." Something flickered in her expression. She grabbed her keys from the hook by the office door and nodded toward the lot. "Then you're driving. And if you stall out, I'm not fixing it twice." They ended up at a roadside barbecue joint with picnic tables and string lights. She ordered ribs and extra cornbread. He followed her lead and didn't ask for substitutions. They ate under the fading sky, the air thick with the smell of hickory smoke. "You ever think about walking away from it all?" she asked, licking sauce from her thumb. "Every day since I met you." She raised an eyebrow. "I built my empire from the ground up," he said. "But lately it's felt more like a cage." "Well," she said, tearing off a piece of cornbread, "freedom's not something you buy. You either take it or you don't." He looked at her and for once didn't have anything clever to say. When they got back to the shop, she leaned against the hood of the Jeep, arms resting loosely at her sides. "You're not like anyone I've ever met," he said. "Try spending 5 minutes at the county fair," she replied. "We're all weird out here." He took a step closer. "I'm not asking for anything tonight. I just wanted to see you again." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe next time you'll bring pie." He smiled. "Deal." And for the first time since returning to the city, the restlessness inside him faded. Just a little. Rain drummed steadily against the windshield of Preston's Range Rover, as he pulled into the gravel lot outside Hartley Automotive. The sky had turned slate gray, low clouds clinging to the hills like smoke. It had been nearly a week since he'd driven back to Palm Creek for dinner and left without so much as a touch. But each day since, he'd felt the pull of this place and her tightening around him like a thread he couldn't cut. She was already outside, dragging a tarp over a partially covered motorcycle frame. Her hoodie was soaked through at the shoulders, and her jeans were streaked with oil. He stepped out quickly, umbrella in hand, moving toward her. "You're going to rust if you stay out here," he said, raising the umbrella over both of them. Jessa didn't look up. "You drove all the way out here to become a weatherman?" "No," he said. "I came because I want to offer you something." "Let me guess," she said, finally straightening and brushing her hands on her thighs. "A job in LA with a corner office and catered lunches?" "No. I want to invest in your garage." She blinked, her lips parting just slightly. "Come again. Partner with me. You've got skill, vision, and grit. I have resources. Let's build something together. Expand. Upgrade the equipment. Hire more techs. You could train young mechanics, host workshops, do it your way." She stepped back from him, the tarp forgotten. "You think you can just fix your midlife boredom by throwing money at my life? This isn't about boredom. It's about believing in something again." Jessa crossed her arms, but her voice was quieter now. "You don't know the first thing about what it's like to build something without a safety net." "You're right," Preston said. "I had investors. I had leverage. But I also know what it's like to pour every hour of your life into something and still feel like it's not enough." She hesitated, and he could see the fight behind her eyes. Not anger, fear. Fear that saying yes would mean changing more than just her garage. "I'm not trying to own it," he said. "I just want to help you grow it. You stay in control. I'll stay in the background. What's in it for you? I get to be part of something that actually matters." Jessa exhaled sharply, then turned and walked toward the covered porch. He followed, closing the umbrella and shaking water from his sleeves. Inside, the shop office smelled faintly of coffee and engine cleaner. A small corkboard was pinned with receipts, faded Polaroids, and a hand-drawn blueprint of a dream layout: 3 bays, a waiting area, and a classroom. He looked at the board. "You drew this." "I was 16, she said, pulling off the wet hoodie to reveal a tank top underneath. "My mom called it the someday wall. It's a good design." She sat on the edge of the desk, arms crossed again. "So what happens if I say yes? You write a check and walk away?" "No. I stay as long as you want me here." She studied him, her gaze sharp and unreadable. "And if I tell you I don't want your money? Then I'll still come back here, with or without a contract." Jessa tilted her head. "Why?" "Because I'm not done figuring you out." The room went still. The rain softened, tapping a steady rhythm against the tin roof. "You're not like the people I'm used to," she said, her voice low. "You don't belong in this town. Then maybe the town needs to make room." She stood slowly, closing the distance between them. "If this is some kind of temporary escape for you, something to make you feel better before you go back to your penthouse, I need to know now." Preston's voice was steady. "I've had everything. The money, the power, the acclaim. None of it ever made me feel like I did the night I changed break lines with you." Jessa's breath caught for a moment, barely perceptible. "I'm not asking you to fall for me," he said, "but I am asking you to let me stay." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she reached into the drawer behind her and pulled out a thick envelope. She handed it to him. "What's this?" "Business plan. I wrote it 3 years ago. Never showed anyone." He opened it slowly, scanning the pages. Diagrams, budget breakdowns, a proposal for a mentorship program for local teens. It wasn't just good, it was brilliant. "You're a visionary," he said, looking up at her. "I'm a mechanic who dreams too big," she corrected. "No," he said, voice firm. "You're someone who makes things better." She leaned her hip against the desk, watching him with a different kind of intensity now. If I say yes, it's all or nothing. No halfway promises. No dropping in and out. I wouldn't want it any other way. They stood there, the space between them humming with something deeper now. Not just attraction trust. The beginnings of something rare. Jessa reached for the envelope again, flipped to the last page, and circled a number. That's what I need. Preston didn't hesitate. You'll have it by Monday. She narrowed her eyes. You didn't even read the fine print. I don't need to, he said. I believe in you. Outside, the storm had begun to pass, the clouds thinning to reveal pale streaks of sun. Then I guess we're doing this, she said. He smiled. Looks like it. She walked toward the door, pausing before opening it. You're going to get your hands dirty. I'm not running a vanity project here. I'll bring my own gloves. Jessa laughed, the sound low and unguarded. You better. They stepped outside together, the air lighter now, the scent of rain clinging to the earth. And for the first time since Preston had driven into town, he wasn't chasing something. He was building it. With her. Jessa pushed open the doors to the newly renovated Hartley Automotive, just as the sun crested over the ridge, casting golden light across the polished concrete floors and gleaming tool cabinets. The walls were still the same chipped blue beneath the fresh paint, but everything else was upgraded. 3 brand-new hydraulic lifts, a glass-walled office, and a custom-built mentoring space tucked in the back corner, complete with 2 workbenches and a whiteboard that still bore the faded ghost of her handwriting from a week ago. She dropped her keys on the counter and walked slowly through the space, fingers trailing across the edge of the new steel work table. The last month had been chaos: contractors, deliveries, back-to-back meetings, and a partnership that had turned her quiet world into something much bigger. But it wasn't the chaos that unsettled her. It was how right it all felt. Footsteps echoed behind her. I thought you weren't a morning person, Preston said, pulling open the door with one hand and balancing 2 coffees in the other. I'm not, she replied. But I like making sure everything's still here when I wake up. He handed her one of the cups. It's not going anywhere. Neither are you, apparently. He leaned against the counter beside her, gaze sweeping across the space. Nope. She sipped the coffee, watching him over the rim. You've been here every day since we opened the doors. You sound surprised. I figured by now, you'd be itching to get back to your penthouse view. I sold it. She blinked. You what? I sold the penthouse. And the house in Malibu. Didn't feel like home anymore. You don't do anything halfway, do you? He looked at her, eyes steady. Not when it matters. Before she could answer, the bell above the front door jingled. A teenage boy stepped inside, awkward in his 2 big coveralls and holding a backpack that looked like it had been patched a dozen times. Hey, Miss Hartley, he said, shifting his weight from foot to foot. My uncle said I should come early. Said you might let me start on the oil change if I got here before the rest of the guys. She tilted her head toward the garage bay. First lift's yours. Tools are on the pegboard. You remember the torque specs? He grinned, nodded, and hurried off. Preston watched him disappear into the bay. That your first in turn? Yeah. Jasper. He's good with engines. Better with people than he thinks. You've already changed his life. She turned back to him. I didn't do it alone. Still, this place, it feels like it's part of something bigger now. She hesitated, then nodded toward the back door. Come on. I want to show you something. They stepped out behind the shop where the dirt lot stretched toward a fenced garden plot she'd been working on in the evenings. A single bench sat beneath a young elm tree, and next to it, a small plaque embedded in the stone. He crouched to read it. In memory of Charles Hartley, who taught me to fix more than just broken things. Preston stood slowly. Your dad. She nodded. He died 2 years ago. Never got to see this place become what we talked about. But he used to sit out here, imagining what it could be. Preston rested his hand on the bench, fingers brushing the worn wood. He would have been proud. I hope so. They stood in silence for a moment, the breeze rustling the leaves above them. Then she turned to him, brows drawn slightly. You gave up everything you built to be here. Don't think I haven't noticed. I didn't give it up, he said. I traded it. For what? For the first life I've ever actually chosen. Her breath caught, but she didn't look away. You don't regret it? Not for a second. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her eyes widened, but he didn't open it. Not yet. I've built companies, navigated hostile takeovers, survived tech crashes, but I've never been more terrified than I am right now. Preston. This isn't about money, or partnership, or even love at first sight, though it felt damn close. This is about everything that's happened between then and now. The late nights, the arguments over tool inventory, the way you roll your eyes when I can't figure out where you put the socket wrenches. All of it. She reached for the box, but his hand covered hers. I want to build a life with you that doesn't need shareholders or 5-year projections. Just days that start in this shop and nights that end with you. She swallowed hard. You're serious? Completely. He opened the box. Inside was a band of brushed gold, simple and elegant. No diamonds. No frills. Just solid, enduring weight. I want to marry you, Jessa. Not because it's the next logical step, but because I can't imagine another sunrise without you beside me. She stared at the ring, then at him. Her voice shook. You still don't know how to change your own oil filter. I'll learn. She let out a shaky laugh, then took the ring from the box and slipped it onto her finger. You better, she whispered. Because you're not getting out of inventory days just because you're my husband. He pulled her into his arms, the scent of oil and rain still clinging to her shirt. She leaned into him without hesitation, her fingers curling into the back of his jacket. I'm keeping the last name, she murmured. Wouldn't expect anything less, he said against her hair. Back inside, the shop hummed with morning life. Jasper waved from the lift. The bell rang again. And again. The world didn't pause for their moment, but it didn't need to. Because this was theirs. No boardroom. No spotlight. Just a garage. A love built on flat tires and stubborn hearts. And the quiet certainty that sometimes, what breaks down on a deserted road isn't the worst thing that can happen. Sometimes, it's the best beginning you never saw coming. The wind carried the scent of motor oil and early spring blossoms through the open garage doors as Jessa adjusted the hem of her navy blue jumpsuit. The new shipment of diagnostic scanners had arrived that morning, and she was halfway through unpacking when Preston walked in. Sleeves rolled, tie discarded, his hair tousled from the breeze. There's a guy in the lobby asking to speak to the boss, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Didn't believe me when I told him you were the one he needed. Jessa peeled off her gloves and raised a brow. Did you tell him the boss also happens to be your wife? Preston grinned as he stepped aside to let her pass. I figured I'd save that punchline for after you made him sign a service agreement. She rounded the corner into the reception area where a man in a crisp suit stood holding a sleek leather portfolio. He straightened when he saw her. Miss Hartley? He asked, uncertain. That's me. You lost. No, ma'am. I'm from the state's Vocational Outreach Board. We've been hearing about your youth mentorship program and the rebuilds your interns have been doing. We'd like to talk about expanding it statewide. Jessa glanced behind her toward Preston, who lifted both eyebrows. You want our program to go statewide? She asked. With your permission, the man said. We'd like to provide funding, resources, and access to other schools and garages. You'd help train the trainers. Jessa folded her arms, mind racing. Why us? The man opened the portfolio and pulled out a photograph. It showed one of their interns, Jasper, standing beside a fully restored motorcycle, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Because this kid wrote us a letter. Said this garage changed his life. Said you taught him more than just engines. Jessa swallowed hard. She hadn't known Jasper had done that. I'll need time to review the terms, she said finally. And I'll want to meet the people I'd be working with. Of course, the representative said. We'll follow your lead. After he left, she turned to Preston, her eyes wide. I didn't see that coming. You're changing lives, he said. Of course the world noticed. But statewide? That's huge. He stepped closer, his voice quiet. You can do huge. You already are. She stared at him for a long moment. You really think I can handle all this? I wouldn't have built it with you if I didn't. They spent the rest of the afternoon going over the proposal, sketching ideas on the whiteboard in the back office. Jessa's mind buzzed with plans, training modules, travel schedules, ways to keep the heart of the garage intact no matter how wide they expanded. That night, as the last bay light flicked off, Preston locked the front door and reached for her hand. You've been quiet since dinner, he said as they walked toward the truck. I was thinking about what this place used to be. Just a dream on a napkin. And now, it's a movement, he said. She looked up at him, her voice softer. I don't want to lose what makes it special. Then don't, he said. Grow it your way. Keep the heart. I'll handle the logistics. She paused by the passenger side, studying him. You really are in this, aren't you? All the way. She leaned in and kissed him, slow and sure. Good. The next weeks moved fast. Meetings with state officials, a visit from 2 school superintendents, and a surprise appearance from a national education magazine looking to do a feature. But through it all, they kept the garage running. Oil changes, tune-ups, training sessions for the kids who kept showing up, eager and wide-eyed. One evening, after a long day of back-to-back consultations, Jessa and Preston took a walk through town. They passed the old diner where they'd first eaten together, now under new ownership but still glowing with the same neon sign. You know, she said, I used to think I'd never leave this town. He slipped his arm around her. Do you still think that? I don't know. I think, if I go anywhere, it'll be because I want to, not because I have to. And you'll be beside me. Always. They stopped outside the community center where their first regional workshop was set to launch the following week. Banners with the Hartley automotive logo fluttered in the evening breeze. I used to be terrified of being seen, Jessa said quietly, of people expecting too much from me. And now, he asked. She turned to him, eyes shining. I'm not scared anymore. He kissed her forehead. That's because you finally see what I've seen from the beginning. The day of the first workshop arrived with clear skies and a line of cars stretching around the community center. Team mechanics from 6 different counties arrived, along with teachers, parents, and local reporters. Jessa led the morning with quiet command, guiding a group of students through a complex rebuild, her voice firm and patient. Preston watched from the back of the crowd, hands in his pockets, a quiet smile on his face. She didn't need a spotlight, she was the light. That evening, back at the house tucked behind the shop, Jessa curled up beside him on the porch swing, bare feet tucked beneath her. You happy? She asked. More than I knew was possible. She rested her head on his shoulder. I used to think love would take away my independence, that I'd have to give up myself to make room for someone else. And now I know that real love makes room for both of us. For all of us. The sun dipped below the trees, painting the sky in streaks of orange and gold. The garage lights flicked on in the distance and the hum of life carried on. Inside, the house was warm and lived in. A calendar on the fridge marked with workshop dates. A basket of laundry by the stairs. A stack of books on small business strategy on the coffee table, dog-eared and underlined in different colors, his and hers. Nothing grand. Nothing flashy. Just home. And them. Together. Forever.